Hello everyone, this is my another demonstration video, and in this video I am going to explain about the cache mechanism and why it is useful in our project and why we have to use in our project, like what is the benefits of cache and how we are implementing, what are the types of caches. So in this video all these things we are going to I'm going to explain and I'm going to show the technical part with proper implementations, how I implemented it and why I implemented it in our the microservice, which is a payment validation service. So let's get started. So here I am using the Redis cache. There are multiple caches present in the market, but currently in our project we are going with the Redis cache, and basically the cache is useful for the data which is required for the every time for every processing, for in our payment integration system, for each transaction we required some amount of some types of data for processing the each payment. For example, there are validation rules, and for example, should be the access token, and like something like various the types of data which we can't define in our application as a static, because it may changes apart for particular time it is going to change. It is a dynamically, so we can't define in our application like a static data, and we can define it in it our database, but for it is going to take a more time complexity if we define that types that various datas, dynamic datas, which is required to process the each payment. And for each payment we are going to calling the database and fetching the data, so it is very time consuming. So for that, for easy accessness and for easy reduce the time complexity, we are going to use the Redis cache. It is like a storage which in which we can define the data. There are several data structures provided by the Redis cache, like there is a normal key value pair, then there is a hash map, then there is a list, and there are many more. So here is defined what are the this here it is the document. So working with the Redis client, there is like direct value with we can work with the map also, we can work with the list also. So all things, these things provided by the Redis cache. So for that we can just implement and write some code and start getting the benefits of the Redis cache. So for now I just explain you that what is the purpose of it. No, so to reduce the time complexity, to faster access of the data, like every time we are not going to process the database, calling the database, fetching the details. So for that, for every transaction we just call the Redis cache. It is quite faster, not quite, it is very faster than the database. So how, where we can implement the Redis cache? So what is the problem, what problems that can be cured by the Redis cache? So like as I said that there in our payment validation service, we are just define the validation rules, like for example the maximum payment threshold, and another validator looks like duplicate transaction check, then there is another like amount cannot be negative, and many more. In future the validation rules can be increase or decrease or modify according to the business. But for each payment we are going to check with all the validator rules. Like now I define the three, but there can be a many more rules. So we cannot just going to the database and calling the each validation rules. Like we are implementing the design pattern. Like we just define some interfaces for the validate common interface for the validator rules, and that the child of that the implementation class of that interfaces are the main validator rules, which is implemented that particular validator interface. Like this is the design pattern in which we are implemented that. Now, so for just calling that we are not just passing the request to another class by class. We are just getting the list of the all the validator rules, and corresponding classes are defined, and by the according to the list, according to the preference of the list, we just call the validator rules. And by fetching the class with the use of the application context bean, we just fetching the corresponding bean of the particular validator rule. And according to that the particular bean which we get, we just call the particular method, and according to that method or implementation, it just checks the validity, or the we can say that it is a valid request or not. If it is not, then we just throw an error from that from that place only, and the request is not going to move further. Now, so the first one is the validator rules, and every validator rules should want the have to want some the parameters. Like it should require some data, like to check the what is the maximum payment threshold, what is the duration, something like that. There are various things according to the validator rules, and for that also is dynamically changeable. Like in future it can be changed. So for that it should also, we can't those parameters, validation parameters, we can't define in the database. So for that, these also uh, we just stored in the Redis cache, like with the proper naming. I'm going to show you that how we implement that. So these are something. Now, or the third use case is like the access token. To like I have worked with the PayPal, so for to call the any API of PayPal, we first get the access token, and that particular access token is valid for the 8 hours. So why we call the we get the access token every time for the request? We just store the particular token for the particular limited of time. It is also the Redis also provide the facility to how much time you want to store the data in the Redis cache. It after that particular time, it just deletes the data from the cache. So there is also like functionality given by the Redis cache. Now, so the access token we just stored in the Redis cache, and for every payment we just get the access token from the Redis cache for faster accessiveness, accessiveness, and to reduce the time complexity. So there are many use cases. I'm just giving you the examples to simply understand by like you can you can assume why it is useful in our payment integration system. According to that, I have explained the benefits of the Redis cache. Now the next part, how we implement it on our project, how we can implement the Redis cache in our project or any project. So for that, here is it is like a software, and we have to install it. It has the port, it has its own server. So it is like some some software only, like it is like a database only. You can compare with the normal database like MySQL. So uh, the first thing is like to install. There is a link, you can just install it. After that, here there is a command, like firstly we have to restart the server, that I have already started here. Like this is the server. I have just execute the command redis server exe, and it's just like this is the logo, here it is the port, there it is the pin id. So I have just started that. Now how I implemented in the code, I'm going to show you now. Now after that, okay, just I have just started the server. Okay, so here it is the validation service, like our project. So let me start this. Okay, firstly I have to open it. After that, Spring Boot app. Okay, the application comes up. Now I'm going to show you the Redis cache also working. I have already implemented the Redis cache. If the Redis server is down, then this particular application going to fail while starting it. It just throw the error because we have coded that way that it should wants the Redis server to be up and running. Now let's check how we can implement the Redis cache. For that, let's the first part, for every extra extra thing if we want to use in our project, we have to like simply add some jars to our class path. And for that, here it is the Redis. Okay, the dependency of the Redis, like Spring Boot starter Redis, we have to just define it here. And after that, we have to provide some configuration in the application.properties file, like what is the port, or how, what is the database we are going to use. Like there are some 14 16 databases by default present in the Redis cache. And there is a particular port number, and there is a host like local host. There is no, not we are just installed in our machine, so it is a local host. And after that, let's, okay, now after that let's go to the coding part. I have defined all Redis mechanism in our particular package, like payments.cache. And let's firstly check is we are defining any bean here. Okay, no bean is required. Now here I have implemented the Redis cache, this thing. Let me check here also, validation payment service. Okay, so this is the particular class, and the Redis by default, that we have just that dependency of Redis we added in our class path. After that, it gives us the some classes, and by using that classes and of that classes, there are some methods, and by using that method, we can operate or execute the particular data structures in our project. Like there are also commands also. Here I can show, we just I show you that there are some commands like this. Like for list, there is r push, l push, l range. There is a map where the commands like hset, hget. And for direct value, there is a set value, get value, del value. Like this there is the command. But how to implement in the uh, Java Spring Boot? Then there is some classes along with the, and in there are some methods provided by the Spring Boot. After adding the dependency of the Redis cache, there are some predefined classes. Like here it is the list operation. It is a class. Let me Okay, interface. It is an interface, and yeah, after implementing that, we got some methods. So as we have defined the two data structures, like we not defined, we just use the two data structures of Redis cache, a list and a map for like for storing the validation rules and for storing the validation parameters. So for rules we have used the list, and for the parameters, because the it should be linked with the rules, so for that we use the hash map. Now there is a proper we just defined the two hash maps, and there is a DAO to like fetching the data from the database. Firstly we have to let me explain the working one more time. We have to for the first time, for the first time we have to call the database and get the data, and store that data into a Redis cache. Then after the second time for another transaction processing, we doesn't call the database. We just fetch from the data. We just fetch the data from the Redis cache. But for the first time, we have to call the database because the Redis cache is empty. Uh, somebody will have to store the data in the Redis cache, and after that we are going to access it. If it is empty, we can't access it, and we can't use it. So for the first time we have to call the database to load the value into a Redis cache, and after that we just use the Redis cache only without calling the database. Now we here it is the validation DAO, and we have just for the constants for validation rules, key and prefix. I will explain you that also. And here is a constructor injection for all the Redis. Here it is the Redis template, the main thing, Redis template. Okay, we have defined this is the Redis template. We have to define this also. Redis template. Let me cross check one more time in app config. Rest template, not Redis. Okay. So we have just defined the Redis cache. It is like a predefined bean. We can predefine class. We just inject it here and list operation validation rules. Now we have defined some methods to get the validation rules, to set the validation rules, to get the validation parameters, to set the validation parameters. We have defined total 4 and many more to load also. Let me explain you one by one. To add the validation rules list, like we if you want to add the validation rule, so how? There is a method called add validation rules list. We just adding the rules. Like if we define another rule, amount cannot be and no, amount cannot be another than rupees, like if there is a check. So we have to add that particular rule into this list, and for that we have to call this method to add the parameter, and it just get the list of the rule. What rule we are going to, what is the rule to add the rule, we have to pass it in a list of manner. So write push validation rules, and it's a particular list, like it is validation rules key, that is validation rules. Okay, it is a list type, so we're just providing the list. Then after that, to add the parameters, we have to define a list. What is the validation rule name? To check, I explained you earlier also. For particular rule, there is some parameters required to process that particular rule. So for that, we are here also define the validation rule along with the validation param. So for that, we just call the method of add validation rule param, and along with that we have to pass the validation rule name and the parameters what it wants. So for easy accessness, we just defined and concat with the validation rule. Prefix, like what is the prefix? Validation rules. Params, we have defined, and the rules and the params, we have defined both two things, string and the string. Yeah, okay. Then after that, particular rule has the particular parameters. Okay. Then after that reset, it is not, I'm not going to explain, it is to for the reset and deleting. I will tell you. And get the validation rule list. So just calling the get range, there is a method list operation dot range. We just pass the validation rule and get the validation rule. Uh, yeah, validation rule key. Then after that, uh, if uh, if it is null, we are providing some validation rules. We are providing some the message that is null. If it is not null, we just return the validation rules. If it is null, then we have to call the database. Yeah, not going to throw the error. If it is null, we just call the database, and database, after calling it, is stored add validation rule, and validation particular validation rule is save to the Redis cache. And same goes with the get validation rule parameters. So it is the method. If it is null, we have to call the database and fetch the validation rule params corresponding validation rule. And the last one is the load the validation rules. Like this is important. It is a post construct method that we have defined in our payment service IMPL, and in that we are just calling the load validation rule params. This thing states that when this application comes up or we just started, then this post construct method calls, and it just calls the method of the load calls the method of cache, like load validation rules and params. And this method does the thing like it just call the two methods, get validation rules list and get validation rules params. Like for the first time it should start, and after that every payment request uses the Redis cache to execute the payment. So it is like we just started in a post construct manner. Like first, as the application is started, we are not waiting for the first request to come, and the like to better the more time complexity and reduce the time complexity, we just not waiting for the first payment to come. And like obviously it is not it can't use the Redis cache because it is empty, so it is quite taking, the first request is going to take quite long time, because it is going to fetch from the data from the database, and after that is it going to execute. And along with that process, after the first database is called, as we coded, like it is going to store in the Redis cache. And then the second request cannot then the second request will not have to call the database. It just use the Redis cache because the data is now available in the Redis cache. So for that, it is just we are defining the first this load validation rules, because the first request is also take the mm, same time as the all request coming after the first transaction request or process. So for easiness, we just define a post construct method. It just call the both get validation rule params and the like this, and get validation rules. Now I'm going to just quickly demonstrate you how it is working. So let me go here, cmd redis hyphen cli hyphen exe. It is a command to, like, it is, let me check, cli dot exe. Okay. Now I have entered in the Redis cache, and using some commands I am going to show you what are the keys available. As I just started the application, it just call the post construct method, and it just call the post construct method, and the post construct method is to call the database and store the validator rules and params into the database. Let me close this and clear, and let me clear this also. Wait. Okay. Keys. This is the command to get the all the keys. Okay, there is two keys available: rules and params. I Now here I'm going to delete these two, and after that I'm just starting the application. And after just started as the application gets started or comes up, it just again call the database, and we are going to cross check that it is stored that these two values again in the Redis cache or not. Let me first delete this. Paste del1 and del. Okay, now keys, it should be empty. It is empty. Now I'm going to just call the database, and I'm going to explain you via logs that how it is working, how the post construct method is going to work. Let me, okay. Let's firstly check. It is now there should be the both validation rule and params should be present in the Redis cache. Okay, it is available. To check, there is a command called lrange validation rules 0 to, okay, wait, 0 to -1. Okay, these three validation rules are there, and for that there are some, not for every rule there should be a parameters, like to check the duplication there should not, there is no need to of the any parameters to check the duplicate rule. There should be need of the transaction reference, so it is not going to show in the Redis cache. You can just pass through a normal method called parameter. Okay, so now I'm going to explain how it worked, like from here, like here. Just post construct method is calling. Let Yes, as the Spring Boot application comes up, it just call this all the post construct method. So there is only a post construct method, that is this load validator rule. So it just call the post construct method. Now it call the validator rules params. Let's go into that. Now loading, ye like it again, this call the get validation rule lists, and this list there is no logs available, so it is going to call with the database, because it is not present in the Redis cache, it is empty, so it is going to call the database. So loading the validation rules from the database. loading the active validation rules. Now hierarchy pool, because it is going to work with the database. Active validator rules, it is all part of the DAO. Active validator rules, there are three validator rules. After that, validator rules, loading validator rules, loaded validator rules, like this is executed. After that, loaded all the rules, these three rules, loaded one by one. Then the parameters is loaded one only. Then after that, loaded validator rules from the cache, payment service IMPL, that the post construct method is executed successfully. And for the second request, it is just call, let me make a call like fire an API, and let's check the logs again. It is calling the post construct method, or there is some difference in the logs. Let's get check. Let me shoot this. Now let's check the logs. Initializing there is a controller payment service IMPL and loaded validation rules from cache. So there is no, you can say that, you can see here, there is no DAO class. Like it is like checking to check from here. But for loading the validation rule, there is no need of DAO. It is just calling the validation rules cache here. Loading the validation rules in this line, and validating all the rules, here, and for each checking, it just take the use of the Redis cache, not the database. So for now, I think I have explained it well. So it is all about the Redis cache, all its work, all its use. Now what is the problem without the Redis cache? How we can uh, use and solve that particular problem with Redis cache? How we implement all these things we successfully mm, mm, see. I have explained in this video. So for now, that's it. Thank you so much.